Joining me now, NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian reporting from London. NBC's Garrett Haake at the White House. Mark Polymeropoulos is a former CIA chief of operations in Europe and Eurasia, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, and MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst. Here in studio with me, the host of MSNBC's The Weekend Prime Time, Ayman Mohyeldin. So, Danielle, what is the latest we know about this strike?
But as you said just moments ago, we are still waiting for official confirmation on the status of those Hamas officials who were targeted today. Did they survive? Are they dead? We still don't know. So we are awaiting for official confirmation there. We've seen Israeli military action all over the Middle East during the past 2 years, but now this includes the Gulf state of Qatar. And this is not another Iran scenario. Qatar is home to the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. And as you just mentioned, it's also played a critical role in the negotiations between Hamas and Israel. It was the Qatari prime minister who months ago was the one to announce the ceasefire back in January. And it was Qatar that gifted a jet to the U.S. president. But the Israelis say they saw an opportunity, and they say they acted, that it was Israel that initiated, conducted it, and taking full responsibility for the attack today. The prime minister of Israel, as well as the defense minister, putting out a statement and saying here yesterday, after the murderous attacks in Jerusalem and Gaza, Prime Minister Netanyahu instructed all security agencies to prepare for the possibility of thwarting the leaders of Hamas. The defense minister fully supported this proposal this afternoon in light of an operational opportunity and in consultation with all heads of the defense establishment and full backing. The prime minister and the defense minister decided to implement the instruction given last night. And they go on to say that they believe that this was fully justified in light of the fact that this Hamas leadership was the one who initiated, they say, and organized the October 7th massacre, that is. Qatar has strongly condemned the attack, calling it cowardly, saying that it targeted residential buildings housing several members of the political bureau of Hamas in the capital. The criminal assault, they say, constitutes a blatant violation of all international laws and norms. And while the state of Qatar strongly condemns this assault, they say it confirms that it will not tolerate this reckless Israeli behavior on the ongoing disruption of regional security. A couple of questions now. What does Donald Trump make of this? And so we wait for word from the U.S. president. Again, what is the status of those targeted today? But I do want to point out one more thing, Chris. Benjamin Netanyahu was meant to be in court yesterday on his corruption trial. That was canceled. He has repeatedly been accused over the past 2 years now of sabotaging ceasefire talks for his political gains by his critics, by the family members of the hostages. And what happened today is only going to fuel that criticism even more. Chris.
Thank you so much for that, Danielle Hamamdjian. So, Ayman, the targets. We do know from a post from Isaac Herzog that one of them is Khalil al-Hayya. What do we know about him?
So let me tell you a little bit about the meeting. I'll tell you specifically about Khalil al-Hayya. So Khalil al-Hayya is the president of the Politburo that represents the Gaza branch of the organization. And here, just to kind of give you a quick overview, Hamas is divided into two main branches, the military wing and the political wing. The military wing operates in Gaza. Israel has killed most of the senior leadership of the military wing, many of them believed to be the ones who actually orchestrated and planned October 7th. Believe it or not, some of the political leadership of Hamas has said they didn't even know about the planning of October 7th because they try to keep a firewall operationally between the military wing and the political wing. Now, what was taking place in Doha today was a meeting among senior members of Hamas's negotiating team. That included Khalil al-Hayya, who is the president of the Gaza Bureau of the political wing, along with Khalid Mishal, who represents Hamas's external relations, and a third member who represents Hamas from the West Bank. Keep in mind, the actual president or the chief leader of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, was actually killed by Israel in an Iran attack in April of last year. So since his assassination, they have not had a political leader, a president, if you will, of the organization. But Khalil al-Hayya is somebody who has grown up in the ranks. He's originally from Gaza, somebody who has had a very hard line when it came to negotiating with Israel. But nonetheless, over the course of the last several months had been involved in these negotiations to try to bring about an end to the ceasefire. I can tell you, though, while we've been on the air, that a senior member of Hamas has spoken to Al Jazeera and said that they are all alive, that they did not succeed in killing Hamas's political leadership that took place in that meeting today. Again, that's just initial reporting, but that was an official statement. A member of Hamas's political office speaking to Al Jazeera in Doha just within the last few minutes saying that.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Stay right there. Mark, we have a new statement from the hostage families, and here's what it says in part. The chance of bringing them back now faces greater uncertainty than ever before. With one thing of absolute certainty, their time is running out. What do you think this strike might mean for the hostages?
So listen, I think, multiple things can be true at once. Was this strike a just strike? Well, I would argue it was. From an American perspective, don't forget that, multiple Americans were also killed. American citizens were killed on October 7th. So there's going to be no tear shed in the U.S. national security establishment, whether this was just. Was it also inevitable? The answer is yes. After October 7th, many of us who work with the Israelis over the years very much expected the Israelis to take weeks, months, if not years, to track down all of the Hamas leadership. And was it brilliant tactically? Sure. It has that element of incredible intelligence gathering over months to find, fix, and then finish a target with the kinetic, finish strike capability. But the real question, Chris, what I think you're getting at is, was it smart? And, for the Israeli hostage families, and frankly, majority of Israelis who think getting the hostages out is the most important part of what the government should be doing. I think there's going to be a lot of questions here because, I don't see how if you're a family member of one of the hostages or the Israeli public, who, of course, is desperate to get their 20 remaining live hostages home, how this is going to hasten that. And in fact, the real question, Israelis are very direct on this, is, would this be actually a death knell for the hostages? So big questions. We can kind of understand that why the Israelis would have wanted to do this at some point. I'm just not sure this was the right point when, again, the hostages, from the Israeli standpoint, are the most important element of the current negotiations.
So, Garrett, Qatar officials have said they originally agreed to host the office for Hamas at the request of the U.S. Does this attack complicate the relationship? Does it complicate the negotiations? Is there any official reaction yet out of the White House?
I think it almost certainly will complicate those relationships, Chris. All we've heard so far from the White House is sourced to senior official and other U.S. officials that the U.S. wasn't involved in this strike and had only the barest heads up that it was going to happen. The president's in a tough spot here. He's positioned the U.S. as kind of the foremost global defender of Israel and supporter of their efforts in Gaza. He's also had one of the warmest relationships of any modern president with the state of Qatar. It was the second country he visited as president, as part of that big foreign trip, really embracing the Qatari leadership and the role that they have taken to try to bring that war to a close. The president has also invested significant political capital in trying to bring the remaining hostages home. Who the U.S. can even negotiate going forward if this strike was successful becomes a lot more complicated and could deepen the president's frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu, which has been reported a little bit on the edges here, that the U.S. is kind of on the outside looking in as this conflict just gets more and more complicated.
So, Mark, the spokesperson, thank you for that, Garrett. The spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry says security forces, civil defense, and relevant authorities immediately began addressing the incident and taking necessary measures to contain its repercussions and ensure the safety of the residents and surrounding areas. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, I don't think there's much to be said for that, really, in substance. I mean, the Qataris are going to have to protest loudly on this, and I think there is some humiliation for them, not only internationally but also for their public. But I expect this is just a one-off from the Israelis. Look, but there are also other concerns. There's a significant, of course, U.S. presence there, the U.S. embassy, a major U.S. air base. And so I think the Qataris and other Arab states will be very cognizant of potential repercussions if Hamas were to take action for this. The Qataris, I think, will get over this. They're going to be very upset about it. You're going to see a lot of condemnation. But again, it goes back to that. Just the fact is the Qataris were playing a role in the negotiations. They have decided to suspend their efforts. And as just was noted, I don't know who anyone actually negotiates with now if the Hamas team was taken out. Once again, the Gaza war is not over and the hostages remain. So we're kind of in a period in which there actually is no forward movement in any way on ending this war at this point.